weapons follows two distinct trends. The quest to create bigger, more powerful killing machines, and what seems like the opposite. The design of smaller, lighter, and more mobile firearms.
Throughout time, the idea is that a weapon is a compromise between range, lethality, and accuracy. When a weapon is developed, it's usually heavy, it's large, it's meant to be very powerful.
But for every class of weapon, engineers also work to transform the big and bulky into the lean and mean.
And so rifles have gotten smaller. Machine guns have gotten smaller. And for every one of these heavy weapons, you've had a development of a lighter weapon.
Tiny weapons can do things bigger firearms can't. They can be concealed and carried farther and faster. Soldiers with small, light weapons can carry more supplies and ammunition. And with a tiny handgun, spies and criminals can get away with murder. One tiny pistol developed in the 19th century became so notorious, it ushered in a whole new era of smaller guns. In 1865, a Derringer, a 6-inch pistol small enough to fit in a pocket, was used to commit one of the most shocking crimes in American history. We all know the story. A flamboyant actor named John Wilkes Booth snuck into President Abraham Lincoln's box at Ford's Theater. He fired at the president's head from point-blank range. But the reason Booth had to get so close to his target? The Derringer. This new tiny pistol wasn't accurate at long range. It would spray bullets every which way out of the barrel. Today's Derringers may look a lot like the old ones, but they're very different inside. Cobra Firearms, located in Salt Lake City, produces about 1,500 tiny Derringers every week.
This is the beginning of a gun right here. This is a barrel insert. We're going to put that important twist.
The twist is called rifling, and it's one of the most important advancements in gun design. Small spiral grooves are cut inside the barrel. As the bullet travels through, it rides these grooves and begins to spin. When the bullet leaves the barrel, the spin continues, improving aerodynamic stability and accuracy.
Keeps the centrifugal force of that bullet traveling in a single direction rather than it wanting to tumble throughout the air.
First introduced in rifles, the process of rifling spread to other firearms, making them more accurate over longer ranges. The Derringer that shot Lincoln did have some rifling in its barrel, but that wasn't enough to make the gun accurate at short range. Early Derringers also had a flaw. The gun's barrel bores were larger than its bullets. The pistol used to kill Lincoln had a .44 caliber gun barrel, but the bullet was only .41 caliber. This mere 0.03 of an inch would cause the bullet to bounce around inside the barrel. Once it left the gun, there was no telling which direction the bullet would fly. Today, every Cobra Derringer features a rifled barrel insert with a tighter fit. Once the rifling is complete, the barrel insert is cast into the barrel.
Now we've got a raw Derringer barrel. She's going to get mated up with her frame. They're going to travel through the system and turn into a firearm. We're going to start at the all-important hinge hole.
The barrel and frame are connected at the hinge hole. This allows the weapon to open and close for loading. Next, workers drill the lock hole. Once they put the lock in position, the barrel will remain fixed to the frame for firing. Derringers have been manufactured since 1852. With the Lincoln assassination, they became so popular that other manufacturers began copying their design, but with a very subtle difference.
If you were to look at an actual Derringer made by Derringer, the spelling is with one single R. Now, there were attempts to copy his weapons even in the day that he made them, and they spelled the name with two R's.
Henry Derringer continued making guns until his death in 1868. But Derringer spelled with 2 R's has now become a generic term for any small 1 or 2 round pistol. Another key difference between 19th century Derringers and today's is the emphasis on safety. Cobra strives to make their weapons as safe as possible.
This crossbolt safety that we've added to it prevents what's called drop fires. So if the firearm is ever dropped on the ground and strikes its hammer when loaded, it won't ever discharge.
28 individually machined parts go into making every Cobra Derringer. When they're all in place, the gun is tested.
We will want to test each and every gun before it leaves Cobra, so the end user is going to be safe.
Weighing less than a pound and loaded with .22 caliber ammunition, this Virgin Derringer is ready for its debut.
Got him.
From the start, the little Derringer appealed to a variety of gun toters. Gamblers could easily hide them up their sleeves. And they became a favorite of women looking for extra protection.
The most common use would have been among prostitutes who would have needed to defend themselves against unwanted attacks.
The Derringer remained popular, but as technology continued to improve, small handguns got even smaller and cheaper. Not surprisingly, criminals and gangsters embraced them, inspiring a name for their weapon of choice, the Saturday Night Special.
This was the gun that you took out on Saturday night in case something happened, and if you had to, it was a throwaway piece.
Saturday Night Special is a label given to an entire group of cheap small handguns. Easy for criminals to toss before police could find them. With nearly a decade of crime-fighting experience, George Wunderlich has seen his share of Saturday Night Specials.
The Astra 25 is one of those Saturday Night Specials that's gained a certain notoriety. It's very easily concealable. You can hide it in your hand. It's as thin as a wallet. This was the gun of choice.
In the first half of the 20th century, gang violence exploded in the U.S. More gangsters meant more guns on the street, and the smaller, the better.
For criminal, concealment is vitally important because it allows you to both approach and retreat from a crime scene without really being able to be noticed.
A small concealable weapon gives you the advantage of surprise.
Another Saturday Night Special, the Rome RG-14, nearly took the life of another commander-in-chief.
One of the most famous uses of the Saturday Night Special would have been the attempted assassination of President Reagan. And what we see here is a very small, very cheap .22 caliber revolver being used that nearly brings down the President of the United States.
As these miniature pistols became more and more prevalent, the authorities stepped in to control them.
The Saturday Night Special was actually outlawed from import or manufacture here in the United States.
The government was compelled to get these tiny and inexpensive firearms off the streets. But it would take more than a new law to stop crime. Coming up, the police fight back with their own smaller weapons.
In today's world, officers need a small, compact system.
And the tank goes tiny.
You're never really going to know what it's like to be visited by the Badger until it comes crashing through your wall.
Next on Modern Marvels. We now return to tiny weapons on Modern Marvels. Tiny weapons are the go-to tool for criminals. They can hide them in a pocket, up a sleeve, or in the palms of their hands. Every year, tens of thousands of small handguns are used in crimes like robbery and murder. But fortunately for the cops and the rest of us, one small pistol helped level the playing field.
As they used to say in the West, God did not make man equal. Colonel Colt did.
Weapon maker Samuel Colt's pocket revolver gave police something they'd never had before. A pistol small enough to hide.
We can now take that revolver and place it into a pocket. It's fully concealed, it's very handy, it's lightweight, and it has multiple shots.
Colt's pocket revolver was the first revolver reliable and accurate enough to be adopted by police. Its secret? Superior design and manufacturing techniques.
It was one of the first guns in America to really use interchangeable parts and a high level of accurate machining to make the weapon.
The development of the Colt Pocket revolver unleashed a variety of new, increasingly smaller pistols. Eventually, it ushered in a new style of policing: the hidden second firearm.
It might be carried in an ankle holster, it might be carried in a pocket, but typically it's concealed in a place that's easily accessible, but not obvious.
Officers call it a backup piece, or the last line of defense. And it keeps the bad guys guessing.
A criminal is going to know that somewhere on that officer's body there's a backup weapon, and they don't know where it is. Therefore, they can't take countermeasures to prevent its use.
Backup pieces are usually quite small, often less than 6 inches in length. But when an officer wants to go tiny, he or she can turn to the .22 Short.
The .22 Short mini revolver is the smallest production firearm being made today.
This tiny gun is only 4 inches in length, and it weighs just 4 ounces.
It can be hidden almost anywhere on the body, even in places that other guns you wouldn't even want to think about.
Of course, criminals carry backup pieces too. Police officers must be ever vigilant for tiny concealed weapons.
You must be absolutely thorough when searching a prisoner. You also have to be looking out at all times for where the hands go. You never know when it could wind up on a weapon.
The .22 Short is the smallest weapon a policeman is likely to carry. But there's something else even tinier: the miniature pinfire pistol. Less than 2 inches in length, these miniguns are a favorite of collectors. The key to making the pinfire so tiny lies in the weapon's ammunition.
Pinfire ammunition, it allows the ammunition to get almost insanely small. We're talking about ammunition all the way down to 2 millimeters.
Advancements in ammunition also contributed to the trend towards ever smaller weapons. Once ammo changed from flint and powder muzzle-loaded systems to smaller self-contained metallic cartridges, pistols and rifles could get smaller too. The miniature ammunition in the pinfire actually fires, but this gun shoots flares and blanks rather than bullets.
At that point, you're not talking about a firearm. You're really almost talking about a toy or a model.
Pistols aren't the only weapons with miniature models. Even machine guns have gotten tiny. When SWAT teams need a weapon with devastating firepower, they turn to this mini machine gun. Developed by Belgian manufacturer FN Herstal.
Holding.
The compact P90 is under 20 inches long and weighs less than 6 pounds. Operators love its small ergonomic design and its versatility in close quarters.
During our training scenario, we were really working on shooting in close proximity to one another. A lot of times in close quarter battle, you're very, very close to your teammate, and you have to practice that in real live fire scenario.
SWAT Commander Ricky Thomas frequently faces life-threatening situations in tight spaces.
P90 is rounded. It has rounded contours, doesn't get caught on your buckles, and it doesn't get caught on your gear. It keeps you from getting snagged and hung up.
To create the compact P90, engineers at FN Herstal adopted the bullpup design.
What the bullpup does is take this same length of barrel and receiver, and by moving it back in stock, it gives you the same efficiency and the same accuracy in a shorter and lighter package.
In standard weapons, the barrel and receiver are placed in front of the trigger. In the bullpup, the action is moved to the rear of the weapon, behind the trigger. This allows the barrel to sit further back in the stock, reducing the overall length of the weapon. Unlike the compact submachine gun, which uses 9mm pistol ammo, the P90 fires a more accurate 5.7mm round, capable of piercing body armor.
The round that's fired out of the P90 is designed to tumble upon impact.
Projectile enters the soft tissue, travels 1 to 2 inches. At that point, the front of the projectile starts slowing down, the rear is still going faster. As it's turning, you get the permanent wound cavity from here to here with
through your wall.
I'm pretty sure you don't want that happening.
No.
Created for SWAT and Special Forces, the Badger is a one-man all-terrain vehicle designed to breach buildings and other fortified positions. It's currently the smallest passenger tank on Earth.
The most unique thing about the Badger is it's super small. It's only 32 inches wide, so it can fit through a door. That was really the huge engineering challenge for us to build a tank that's smaller than a human, yet can fit a human in it.
Its small size makes the Badger incredibly mobile, and its armor plating can repel large caliber rounds. The shape of the Badger's front end is crucial to its success in the field.
The more angled this vehicle is to the person that's shooting at it, the better it's going to be at deflecting bullets. Here we have a 50 caliber armor-piercing round that just barely made it in and then ricocheted out. Here we have an AK-47. Those are very, very, very powerful rounds. Handgun round won't even mar the paint on this.
And it's not just impervious to rifle fire. The Badger can stand up to small explosives, too.
I can't really tell you the size of explosive that this thing can handle, but it put this thing 8 feet in the air and only sustained about 25 Gs on the inside, which means the guy survived.
Storming buildings uninvited is the Badger's specialty.
We've used it to punch through cinder block walls, reinforced rebar walls.
In the event there's an emergency, something's going on, we don't want the Badger to have to run around, look for a door. It can literally go through a wall.
Bringing the Badger to life wasn't easy. Just cutting the armor was a massive undertaking.
One of the most difficult things with the Badger is how do you cut the material? This is so hard, you can hear it.
The answer? Water jet cutting. At 60,000 pounds per square inch of pressure, the water jet cutter can slice through hardened steel and granite.
In engineering, you never really know what you're going to end up with until it's done. And so that's why here we produce prototypes and we test and we test and we test again. And by the end of the day, if we've done a good job, we have a vehicle that is really survivable.
The mini tank doesn't end with the Badger.
Robots right now are really important for the military. We want to reduce the amount of casualties we're getting abroad and bring our soldiers home. We have today's technology, which is a human small miniature tank, to tomorrow's technology, which is a very, very small robot that can still do that mission, but remove the human right out of the hazardous environment.
Coming up, they may look like toys, but these remote-controlled planes are saving lives.
These are instrumental to the way our warfighters operate.
Get down! Put the weapon down! Land your stomach!
And nuclear weapons go portable. Next on Modern Marvels. We now return to tiny weapons on Modern Marvels. Flying behind enemy lines to gather intelligence is risky business. So the Air Force developed a small unmanned aerial vehicle in the 1990s. The Predator. At just 27 feet long and with a wingspan of 49 feet, it's flown remotely and can stay airborne for 40 hours. Armed with 2 Hellfire missiles, this UAV delivers a punch that can destroy tanks or bust bunkers. But for today's frontline warfighter, the Predator isn't practical. Faced with an enemy that's planting IEDs or sniping from rooftops, troops now have their own smaller versions that can be carried in a backpack and launched by hand. The brains behind this new generation of UAVs is AeroVironment in Southern California.
These unmanned aircraft systems are instrumental to the way our warfighters operate. They provide critical information within a critical time frame that enables those warfighters to do what they need to do to complete their mission.
AeroVironment has 3 small UAVs in production, each with different capabilities.
If they need to keep continuous coverage over an area for an extended period of time, they might want to use a Puma system, which can fly for 2 hours.
The Puma is the largest of the 3, with an 8-foot wingspan. It weighs about 13 pounds. What also sets the Puma apart is a mechanical rotating camera that can lock on a target and maintain constant surveillance.
The airplane can fly in a straight line and can keep the camera focused on a given target, which helps them do their jobs much more effectively.
And we can clearly see he has a weapon on the ground. He has a shovel in his hand, and he appears to be digging a hole. We've gotten really good feedback from the field where soldiers have been able to get intelligence just like this.
When troops need a smaller, even more mobile UAV, they can turn to the Raven.
Raven is the most prolific unmanned aircraft in the world today. We've shipped more than 15,000 of these little airplanes to customers all over the world.
The Raven is more concealable than the Puma, but it can only stay airborne for 90 minutes. AeroVironment's smallest UAV, the Wasp, is roughly the size of a hobbyist's remote-controlled plane.
Less is definitely more for our military customers. The Wasp is the smallest unmanned aircraft system in the world today. It weighs about 1 pound. It flies for about 45 minutes. It can be packed inside of a backpack. You just throw it in the air and it flies away.
The Wasp's small size and quiet electric motor make it nearly undetectable from the ground. Tiny, stealthy, unmanned aircraft are the perfect tools for troops facing sniper fire. Once they know where the enemy is hiding, they can lower the hammer.
Get down! Put the weapon down! Land is coming!
Sergeant.
These are used by frontline warfighters. They have to be small. They have to be light.
These mini UAVs also have to be tough.
There have been cases where insurgents had actually hit these aircraft, put a hole in a wing, and when they bring it back, they can just take a roll of duct tape and put it on, tape it up, and send it right back out in the air.
The biggest beating can come on landing. So the UAVs are built to break apart upon impact.
Kevlar is a material that we use to ensure the strength and the lightness of these aircraft. When you see the kind of beating these take out in the field, you'll understand why we need to make sure this is very, very durable.
But the pieces don't break. The troops can actually snap them back together. AeroVironment has one more UAV in development that can deliver a blow of its own.
We've also been developing a totally new kind of a system, which is actually more like a munition than an unmanned aircraft system, and we call that the Switchblade.
The tiny Switchblade is fired from a launch tube on the ground. As the plane approaches its target, the onboard explosive is armed.
The Switchblade then flies into that target and detonates, taking out that target and removing the threat.
While the Switchblade will deliver a small, precise payload, the goal of a nuclear bomb is to unleash as much destruction as possible. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union raced to build ever bigger bombs and missiles, weapons capable of wiping out entire cities. But we also thought small. In the 1950s and 60s, the Soviet invasion of what was then West Germany seemed very possible. The United States wanted a weapon that could stop the Soviets cold. So they created miniature nuclear bombs.
The United States military in the 1950s actually developed an atomic recoilless rifle, kind of like an atomic bazooka. It was nicknamed the Davy Crockett.
When you start to miniaturize atomic weapons, they become tactical. They can actually be used for the first time on the battlefield, and that completely changes the equation.
The Davy Crockett carried the lightest nuclear warhead on record, the W-54. At 11 inches in diameter and weighing 51 pounds, the W-54 was small and light enough to be carried by one man.
Had a tripod, you could download it or actually fire it from the Jeep itself.
The Davy Crockett's range was about 2 miles. And so depending on the power of the warhead and the direction of the wind, the operating team could be in danger.
With the more powerful explosive heads that were used on the Davy Crockett, there's actually a possibility that the range of the kill zone is greater than the effective range of the weapon, making it a weapon of last resort.
The Davy Crockett was tested several times, but never used in combat. Eventually, the weapon was stockpiled and then decommissioned in 1971. Next on Modern Marvels, more than just tiny. These weapons are in disguise.
You have a right to defend yourself. We advise strike hard and get out of there.
Between 1961 and 1971, 2,100 Davy Crockett systems were deployed throughout Europe. It was last tested above ground on July 17, 1962. This marked the final U.S.-sponsored above-ground test of any nuclear weapon. Tiny weapons will return on Modern Marvels. We now return to tiny weapons on Modern Marvels. We've seen how advances in technology have made weapons smaller, more maneuverable, but just as deadly. These tiny tools make fighting more efficient, both for the good guys and the bad. But another, more secret group of weapon wielders relies on miniature devices to survive. Spies.
When you start to get into the realm of spies, you're talking about miniaturized and unusual weapons, really of types that almost boggle the mind.
Cigarette packs, lipstick cases, even pens have all been transformed into firearms. The intelligence community is incredibly creative when it comes to tiny weapons.
One of the more interesting cases was actually an umbrella used to deliver a poison dart.
In 1978, Bulgarian dissident Georgy Markov was killed when a tiny pellet of ricin was injected into his leg.
They figured out what happened during the autopsy. Almost anything can be disguised. It's really quite amazing.
Spies may have an arsenal of secret weapons, but they're not alone. Irv Miller and his wife Laura have been developing tiny self-defense weapons for civilians, police, and corrections officers.
At some point in everybody's life, they get scared. Having some type of self-defense weapon on you is a good idea.
Irv bought his first stun gun more than 20 years ago and got instantly hooked on small, less lethal weapons.
Not every situation calls for a lethal action. Lethal actions are literally life and death.
One of Irv's best sellers is the Kubotan. This slim impact weapon packs a punch in less than 6 inches of aluminum or plastic.
What makes it so effective is that there's pressure points all over the body.
Understanding the body's various pressure points is key to mastering the Kubotan.
You take a hard object like a Kubotan, you press that anywhere around the wrist and squeeze from the other side with your thumbs. You're going to take total control of that person.
With hundreds of applications, the Kubotan can be used in almost any scenario.
Somebody comes up from behind you and grabs you. She'll press the Kubotan down into the elbow area and then takes control of wrist. It's one of many pressure points. When she presses down, my hand lets go. No matter how big the guy is, if he grabs you, you put one of these between his knuckles and pull his hand, he's going to let go, and he's going to go with that hand.
At first glance, the Wildcat keychain seems harmless, even cute. But squeeze it inside your fist, and it becomes a devastating self-defense weapon.
Another close-quarters weapon that we sell are stun guns.
Stun guns deliver a disabling electric shock. Law enforcement has used them for decades, and more recently, the general public. A stun gun works off a simple 3 or 9-volt battery system. Energy is sent through a set of capacitors to produce a high-voltage current, from 100,000 volts to more than 1 million. The strong electric shock disrupts the signals that go from the brain to the voluntary muscles, causing them to shut down. The effects last up to several minutes. Consumer stun guns come in a variety of tiny shapes and sizes.
This gun here doubles as a cell phone. Everybody's carrying a cell phone, but this cell phone has an LED light which comes in handy, but even more importantly, it's a stun gun. What's great about these mini stun guns is they're small, compact, very concealable, and they pack a hell of a punch.
Stun guns are considered close-quarter weapons. When you need a tiny weapon with a longer range, you can grab a can of pepper spray.
What pepper spray is a mixture of very hot peppers with a few other components that cause the body to do things involuntarily. The eyes will slam shut. Your lungs feel like they're closing up. your airways and mucous membranes start to swell. It takes the fight right out of somebody.
The hot pepper in Irv's pepper spray is rated at 2 million Scoville heat units. That's 400 times hotter than a jalapeno pepper. But Irv sells an even more powerful pepper spray.
We call it Black Label Special Tactical Ops. And what this is for is worst case scenarios. So we already have a really nasty pepper spray to begin with. Then you add 2% tear gas. That combined with pepper is totally for a respiratory takedown. Tactical teams can hit them with the Black Label and pretty much incapacitate someone within a half a second or so.
Working with police and civilians, Irv believes that using less lethal force is the first step in any physical confrontation.
Nobody wants to take a life. In most situations, if you pull the pepper spray to use it first and it gets ugly fast, you literally throw the spray and you pull your sidearm. That's how it's done.
From the city streets to the fields of war, as weapons get more powerful, ingenuity shrinks them down.
Making weapons big is easy. The hard part is trying to make something that works so that one soldier can carry it into battle.
Whether it's for self-defense against a single foe or full-scale war versus an army of enemies, tiny weapons have a big place in today's arsenals.